All right, I see a whole lot of people getting jammed up on this, so let's talk about it. I'm your lawyer, Patrick McGeehan, and I am your best friend at your worst time. I handle a lot of cases involving violation of probation. I have a lot of clients myself that violate their probation and have to come back to me to represent them again in a violation of probation case. People get jammed up on these violation of probation cases, particularly when it's drug offender probation or it's DUI probation or it's sex offender probation. Those are the main cases I see. Mostly drug offender probation and sex offender probation are the cases I see the largest amount of. I see a lot of DUI too, involving people who are alcoholics, and that's similar aspects to what I see in drug offender probation. So let's take it one step at a time. What is a violation of probation? A violation of probation in Florida occurs when, number one, you're on probation and you have substantially and willfully violated a term of your probation, like not for drug offender probation, like not taking a drug test or not showing up to report or something. It can't be something small and technical. It has to be willful and substantial. For example, if you have a case involving restitution and you don't pay restitution because you don't have a job and you're unable to get a job or unable to find a job, there's case law in Florida that says that is not willful and substantial. But what I see is drug offender probation in Florida is nothing more than a pipeline to the state prison. It is an easy route for the state to incarcerate you for a very long time. So what kind of cases do I see in the drug offender probation violation? I see a lot of people, not particularly my clients, but I see a lot of people represented by the public defender's office, or they appear in first appearance, or they appear at their first pretrial, and they've been in jail for a few days, up to a few months, and they take a plea offer. The state of Florida, depending upon the facts of your case, will sometimes give you a pretty good plea offer involving probation on drug offense cases if it's your first or second time. So people, since they've been in jail for a while, for whatever reason, they couldn't make bond, they couldn't get out, they accept this probation. And its drug offender probation is more rigorously monitored than regular probation. And I see a lot of people who are addicts who accept drug offender probation simply because they want to get out of jail. Their main concern is getting out of custody and getting back to life. And like I said, it's a pipeline to the state prison system. I've had clients and I've seen cases where people were violated the next day after they release. The judge always tells you report to probation within 24 hours of your release. I have people that are so happy to get out, and I've seen people that are so happy to get out, they never report to probation, and that is a substantial violation. So I've seen cases where people were violated the next day. I've seen people make it a week. I've seen people make it a month, and I've seen people make it through the whole program. But by and far, most drug offenders who are addicts violate their probation sometime during the probationary period, usually within the first few months, from what I've seen. And the state knows this. So when you violate your probation, your next offer is going to involve most likely state prison time. The state knows this. That's why it creates the pipeline to the state prison system. So let's talk about drug offender, or let's talk about sex offender violation of probation cases. This is usually most of the cases I see are failure to register, failure to document your address, moving without changing your address with the sheriff's office, violations like that. Those are substantial and willful violations. Not having your cars registered properly is another one that I see a lot of. When you have a defendant charged with a violation of sexual offender probation, the state's always going to look to put them in jail. The minimum offer you're probably going to get from the state, depending upon how long you've been a sexual offender and how serious the violation is and how many violations you've had, is going to be probably a year and a day. That's at a minimum. And then it's going to go up to a number of years from there. And it comes down to, what's the gamble? To go to a hearing, the hearing is very easy. Violation of probation, if it's substantial and willful, is very easy for the state to prove. They have to prove one, that you were on probation, which is very easy because they have the recording and your signature on the police sheet where you accepted the probation. And then they have to prove the willful and substantial part, which is if it's a failure to register issue, that's fairly easy. Change address, that's fairly easy. Those are all documented. They usually send deputies out regularly to check on sex offenders to make sure all vehicles are registered and their address is registered and they're in compliance with the registration. So your offer is depending upon how long you've been a sexual offender, how serious the violation is, how many violations before, you could be looking at substantial prison time. And I see those cases all the time, both the cases I have and cases that I see in court. So let's talk a little bit about DUI, the other probably third largest category I see of violation of probations. I see a lot of cases where people who are alcoholics take pleas on DUI involving probation. In Florida, any plea to a DUI is going to involve some type of probation, and they fail the test. They don't report to probation because they've been drinking, and they fail alcohol Alka-Seltzer tests, and they get violated. So it's very similar to drug offender probation. Alcoholics can't make it very long. Some of them do. Some people get the help they need and they enter rehab and they're able to manage it and they make it. But I see a lot of alcoholics that can't make DUI probation. Very similar to drug offender probation. So what do you do? If you're an alcoholic or you're an addict, well, I tell my clients, I explain to them what I sit down with the sheet of requirements for drug offender probation and whatever probation they're on and go through it line by line. And I tell them and I encourage them to get outside help in addition to the probation. Because if you violate something when you're going along, at least you could show you were going above and beyond. That's if you take the plea. I mean, you could always fight the case and see if you can get it dismissed, and that does happen a lot. But in cases where you're stuck in the probation, you have to take proactive measures. Another thing is if you do violate, call your attorney and let them know. See if you can get out in front of it. A lot of cases I can head off violation of probation affidavits being filed, depending upon the facts of the case. I can head them off with the probation officer and the state attorney and get it resolved before it ever makes it back to court. So don't ignore it. That would be very bad. Anyway, that's what I see in violation of probation cases here in Florida. It's a sad thing. Like I said, most probations or most drug offender probation is just a pipeline to state prison. Sexual offender probation is zero tolerance. They're gonna if you violate there, they're gonna put you in prison for sure, or at least try to. Make sure you get a lawyer who's well experienced and competent in violation of probation cases. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments or contact me via email. I'll be happy to discuss them with you. And be careful out there. Be careful of those pleas that you accept.